Inside an abandoned house in the woods of Simpsonville, South Carolina, police discovered the body of Katie Blauvelt. She was found hidden inside a large concrete box in the basement, sealed shut with a piece of plywood. The scene was surrounded by decaying walls and ritualistic graffiti. These satanic markings appeared to be a deliberate attempt to make the murder look like a random, cult-inspired attack. Forensics, however, suggested a different motive. Katie was stabbed 16 times. The knife remained in her neck. There was no sign of struggle. The specific state of her clothing indicated a targeted, personal killing, rather than a random act of violence. The investigation immediately focused on Wayne, Katie's ex-boyfriend and roommate. Wayne was the one who placed the 911 call, and he admitted to knowing about this obscure hangout spot long before the discovery. This environment had been curated to trigger specific investigative biases. By leaving the body in a place so closely associated with Wayne, the killer ensured that detectives would walk into the basement and find their prime suspect waiting for them. Detectives pushed Wayne during a long interrogation, focusing on a critical 5-hour gap in his timeline. They wanted to know why he had waited so long after his shift ended to call the police. Wayne's situation worsened when he admitted to walking near the abandoned house during the exact window of time that Katie disappeared. To investigators, this placed him at the crime scene during the commission of the murder. Under intense pressure, Wayne began to break. Detectives were convinced of his involvement, nearing a confession for a crime he didn't commit. Wayne was effectively a manufactured suspect. He was in the interrogation room not because of his actions, but because of a sequence of events orchestrated by an architect who remained outside the room. Accepting the physical evidence at face value meant the investigators were following the path the killer had cleared for them. It was a strategy designed to let the real murderer end the investigation before it truly began. That architect was John Blauvelt, Katie's husband. As an Army sergeant and recruiter, John's approach to the investigation was defined by a structured military mindset and a high degree of operational control. John utilized a tactic known as reverse empathy. During his interview, he defended Wayne, calling him a good guy and a friend. This calculated display of compassion lowered the investigator's guard and made John seem like a grieving, non-threatening partner. He then subtly steered the conversation toward Katie's personal life, suggesting she had been dating around. This redirected the detective's focus away from the home and toward an unknown circle of third parties. John had also reached out to his roommates, Crystal and Catherine, before they spoke to the police. By dictating the details of his own whereabouts to them, he ensured that their statements would unknowingly reinforce his manufactured alibi. This level of manipulation is difficult to detect because the suspect isn't just lying, they're actively shaping the memories and narratives of the witnesses around them. The control John exercised over his household didn't extend to everyone. Katie's niece, Cheyenne, provided testimony that directly contradicted John's claims, painting a portrait of a volatile and abusive relationship. Cheyenne revealed John's history of explosive anger and a clear financial motive, a $150,000 life insurance policy. For the first time, investigators had a reason to look past the frame job. However, John had been careful. Without physical proof connecting him to the basement, detectives lacked the evidence required to secure a DNA warrant from a judge. A frame job is inherently fragile because it requires every participant to stay on script. The moment a single, uncompromised witness provides a different perspective, the narrative begins to unravel. To get the DNA they needed, detectives turned to an unconventional sting. They set up hidden cameras and microphones at Katie's funeral, strategically placing water cups to collect samples from the guests. The plan worked. John drank from a cup and left it behind, allowing investigators to bypass the need for a warrant and obtain his DNA directly from the discarded plastic. The hidden cameras also captured John's behavior. He was filmed taking photos of Katie's body in the casket, while his 17-year-old roommate Hannah giggled next to him. When police brought Hannah in for questioning, they confronted her with the funeral footage. Her initial claims of a solemn, respectful visit collapsed, and she was caught in a series of direct lies about their activities. Cell tower data provided the final link. On the night of the murder, the phone signals of John and his military friend, Charles Scott, were found overlapping directly at the abandoned house where the body was discovered. John's undoing came from his overconfidence. He believed he could manage the variables of a public funeral with the same degree of control he used to manipulate his close friends and family. Sensing the investigation was closing in, John deserted his military post. He fled South Carolina with Hannah, sparking a nationwide manhunt that stretched across the country. Nearly a month later, John's red Yukon was found abandoned in the rugged mountains of Oregon. The vehicle was filled with scattered camping gear, suggesting the pair had transitioned to living entirely off the grid. With John on the run, investigators finally accessed his digital history. Recovered chat logs confirmed that John had been planning the murder for months, and that Hannah had explicit knowledge of his intentions. By becoming a fugitive, John lost the ability to influence the people around him. He traded his capacity for social manipulation for the isolation of a life spent avoiding physical detection. 6 years passed without a lead. John successfully erased his past, living under the alias Ben Clean and starting a new life with a new wife in the Pacific Northwest. The case finally reached its end in 2022. U.S. Marshals tracked John to Oregon, ending his years of hiding in plain sight. It was later revealed that Hannah had remained in contact with John throughout his entire time on the run. These digital breadcrumbs proved essential in locating him, and resulted in Hannah receiving a 10-year sentence for her role. In 2024, John Blauvelt was convicted of Katie's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. John's ability to manipulate witnesses and redirect suspicion eventually reached a hard limit. While he could influence how people remembered the night of the crime, he could not overcome the objective reality of DNA evidence and digital forensics.